Last week, Rob Liefeld posted a rather lengthy, rather insightful message updating followers on the status of Youngblood and his other IP. So I wanted to break this down and follow the timeline from inception to now, have it make sense, because honestly it does get a little bit convoluted. So this way we can break it down together, follow along the storyline, and look at it from both sides. Is Rob truly the victim that press and the media is portraying him to be, or is this yet another bad decision that has come as a result of a long line of other bad decisions along the way? So let's break it down. Rob still does own Brigade, Bloodstrike, Cybrid, Rejects, Bloodwolf, Kaboom, and some others. Characters like Deadpool, Cable, Major X, and Domino are all owned by Marvel, even though he's the creator. But I just want to make that distinction. Those are not part of the story. In 2018, he and Netflix were in a contract negotiation with a 7-figure number on the table to adapt some of those properties he does own. At the beginning of 2019, that particular deal fell through when he walked away from 7 figures. But what about Youngblood, arguably his biggest, most famous, most popular title outside of his big 2 work? Image pulled 7 creators from Marvel's bullpen in the early 90s with the idea towards better pay rates, better page rates, and the biggest, which was creator-owned IP with less editorial oversight. Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Jim Valentino, Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, Willis Portacio, and Mark Silvestri all formed this new publishing firm. Each of them would then form their own studio under the Image Comics banner. McFarlane created Todd McFarlane Productions, Jim Lee formed Wildstorm, Silvestri founded Top Cow, Valentino made Shadowline, Lark's Highbrow, and Rob Liefeld created Extreme Studios. For the first year of creation, which was 1992 to 1993, Image Comics had brokered a deal with a man named Scott Rosenberg. Scott Rosenberg was co-owner of Malibu Studios, and they would publish the Image books. Dave Ulbrich, who you can see quoted in the article here, actually teamed up with Scott Rosenberg, who owned a comic book distribution company called Sunrise at the time. And together they would be distributor, and Rosenberg was financier for Malibu and their new partnership with Image. Now, Rosenberg will continue to be important to this story, so that's why I mentioned him specifically. In 1992, Youngblood became one of the first comic books to be published by the fledgling upstart Image Comics. Shaft, Photon, Bad Rock, Die Hard, Chapel, Vogue, and Combat were a carryover of an idea for DC Comics that Rob Liefeld had for Teen Titans, said Liefeld in an interview once. He was going to write a Teen Titans book with Marv Wolfman that fell through, so he adapted the idea to his own, and it became Youngblood. Youngblood's a team of superheroes who deal with paparazzi and the government all at once. Youngblood was the quintessential 1990s comic book. Bigger, bolder, bloodier, boobier, and badder. In 1993, Image left Malibu to become their own publisher, and shortly thereafter, Malibu actually sold off to Marvel Comics. 5 years later, 1997, Rosenberg established a licensing firm called Platinum Studios. 1997 is also the same year that Rob Liefeld left Image Comics to form his own studio, which was Awesome Comics. It was alleged that Liefeld was using funds from Image Comics to fund his Maximum Press that was outside of the Image umbrella. Eventually, in War Child, for example, were characters under Maximum. When he left and everything evolved into Awesome Comics, the rights to Youngblood went with Liefeld. However, at the time, he brought in an investor to help fund Awesome Comics. That new investor? Yes, Scott Rosenberg. Liefeld also brought in a guy named John Hyde, who was CEO of an animation firm called Film Roman, as an additional financier. Awesome Comics lasted until the year 2000, when apparently Rosenberg and Hyde had a falling out. I guess Rosenberg wasn't happy that Liefeld brought in another finance guy. As the company was winding down to shuttering its studio doors, the character IP rights were split between Liefeld, Rosenberg, and John Hyde. Liefeld kept a bunch like Brigade and the ones I mentioned earlier. Hyde got Profit and Glory, and Rosenberg got Youngblood. In all, they each got 8 titles, but Liefeld throughout that maintained publishing rights. And Liefeld and Hyde still maintain a good working relationship. In fact, they're pursuing a Profit film adaptation as we speak. Despite all of this, Liefeld and Rosenberg as well maintain a professional relationship regarding Youngblood. They split their time between PR, creative, and the business side of the game between them until 2018, when Rosenberg needed some money and he struck a deal using his most valuable IP. Enter Andrew Rev. Andrew Rev is the founder of a comic book publisher from the late 80s, early 90s boom called Comico. Rev also had the rights to a title called Elementals, which is this really cool Bill Willingham story. You should check it out. When the industry collapsed in the 90s, Comico went out of business. And then, fast forward 20 years later, Rev wanted to get back in the game. Rev knew Rosenberg from that time period. He was at Malibu and Rev at Comico during the same time. Rev wanted to bring Rosenberg on board his new publishing firm called Terrific Productions, a firm so new booth that they debuted at 2019's San Diego Comic-Con. On August 6, 2019, Liefeld confirmed via tweet that the publishing rights were sold in secret from Rosenberg to Rev, his words, not mine, and that Image, Skybound, and IDW would have bid much higher bids, mind you, for the publishing rights had they known. And so Liefeld and Rev have taken shots at each other. Rev at Liefeld saying he just wants Hollywood's attention and money, and Liefeld shots at Rev saying, how does Youngblood benefit from having a guy who hasn't published a comic book in over 20 years at the helm? Rev then told Liefeld, well, you can audition for producing Youngblood comic books. As a result, Liefeld decided to wash his hands of Youngblood, no longer participate, no longer publish comics, as he had done with Rosenberg despite not owning it. He was done with Rev, he is done with Youngblood. But it gets a little bit more confusing because if you ask Rosenberg why he sold his Youngblood rights to Rev, he'll tell you that he didn't. According to Rosenberg, the rights laid with a company that he once owned called Rip Media, and that it was actually Rip Media who sold to Andrew Rev. Rip still technically owns the rights, even now, but they've contracted with Rev and Terrific to publish content, so they have the publishing rights. But Rob still owns a few of his creations as the IP catalog was split in thirds. He still owns Brigade, as we mentioned. In fact, he raised $35,000 via Kickstarter for new issues, which were supposed to be promised with a deadline of October 2013, but that book is yet to see the light of day, even after raising another $5,000 via Indiegogo. On one hand, I really do empathize with Rob. I mean, look, this has been something that he created decades ago, early 90s. He came up with Youngblood. This has been his heart and soul, one of the things that's been near and dear to his heart for all this time. And now suddenly that toy is no longer in his toy chest. But on the other hand, you have to look at the history, the falling out with Image, the failure of multiple studios, the thing with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, walking away from 7 figures with Netflix, and now this. Was this really the result of nefarious collusion and the attempt to sweep the proverbial rug out from under his feet? Or is this just an inevitability based on a series of bad business decisions over the decades? You tell me in the comments down below which side you fall on with this story. Here's what Liefeld says about the whole situation and why he chose to air it publicly on his Facebook page. And here's the quote. I felt like the fans were owed an explanation, and you can say I've hidden it for 23 years, but it's not a secret. My closest friends in the business knew, and even some fans I have a close relationship with knew. Never in a million years did I think they'd end up with a guy with no publishing record. So there you have it, folks, the story of Rob Liefeld, Image, Youngblood, and just where those lights lie today. But go ahead and let me know in the comment section below your thoughts and impressions on this whole convoluted mess that Rob's once again found himself in. And if you like content like this, don't forget to subscribe. We do upload videos just like it every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.